Critical pedagogy is an important educational concept. What is critical pedagogy? What is the need for the application or the implementation of critical pedagogy in education? And what is the general process of implementing critical pedagogy in the educational context? These are questions that we will briefly respond to. So first, pedagogy, as we know, is the art and science, the method and the practice of education, or the implementation of the educational process. Specifically, this is something that deals with the process of teaching. Critical pedagogy is an approach or a philosophy of teaching that is rooted in the idea that education should aim at the promotion of social justice, liberation, and critical consciousness on the part of the students. So education generally is considered as a process where there is a set of knowledge and information that is transferred to students. But in terms of critical pedagogy, the concept is not just the inculcation of certain knowledge and skills among the students, but actually the development of social justice, the liberation of the ones that we educate, and the development of critical consciousness or critical thinking on the part of students. The philosophy of this type of education is that education should be a tool for social change and empowerment of the oppressed, and not just a process that aims at the continuation of particular social structures or political structures or economic structures in the society. Now, there are certain prominent proponents of the critical pedagogical school of thought. The first one among them is Paulo Freire, who was a Brazilian educator, and according to him, education should empower students to challenge status quo and oppression. Here is a quote from him: "There is no such thing as neutral education. Education either functions as an instrument to bring about conformity or freedom." So, according to Freire, much of the education, the contemporary education, basically aims at bringing in conformity, while the actual aim, according to him, of education should be to free the students, to develop them as free thinkers. Similarly, Henry Gerox is another prominent proponent of this philosophy, who says that education is inherently political and should be used for social change. Here is a quote from him: "Critical pedagogy becomes a project that stresses the need for teachers and students to actively transform knowledge, and not just to transfer knowledge or to get knowledge, rather than simply consume it or give it to students, for example, on the part of the teachers." So transformation, rather than just transfer or consumption of knowledge, is something that is at the aim, that is at the basis of critical pedagogy. Similarly, Peter McLaren is another proponent of this school of thought. According to him, education should be revolutionary and it should challenge exploitation. So critical pedagogy is, according to him, is a way of teaching against the grain or teaching against the traditional thinking or thought. And similarly, bell hooks, another prominent proponent of the school of thought, argues that intersectionality in education, her focus is on intersectionality on education, or focus on the particular ways in which there is gender stereotyping is presented through education, or race is presented in education, particularly with reference to certain states, and class. So these are the important issues that education should address. So here is a quote from her: "In my classrooms, I do not expect students to take any risks that I would not take, to share in any way what I would not share." This actually means that the role of the teacher is to expose themselves to as much danger as they are exposing the students to. In other words, the teacher should be taking challenges in order for them to represent themselves as change agents and as people who take leadership, and then they inspire students towards that end. Now, why is it that we need to have critical pedagogy according to these proponents? The first one is that critical pedagogy is a form of education that challenges oppressive systems. So generally, traditional education reinforces class, race, and gender inequalities, while critical pedagogy seeks to dismantle these, and so it enables students to challenge these systems. Similarly, it empowers learners because it helps in the encouragement of students to become active critical thinkers. So they are not just receiving information without reflecting on that and analyzing and synthesizing the information. They ask questions, they question the authority of the teachers, the society, and they question the societal norms and traditions. Thirdly, critical pedagogy encourages social justice, mainly because it helps using education as a tool to address discrimination on the basis of gender, for example, or race, or other such things. It also helps in developing consciousness against marginalization and exploitation of certain classes of the society by others. The next thing that is why we need to have critical pedagogy is that it helps in developing or promoting democratic education, where the shift is focused. Basically, the focus goes from the hierarchical teacher-student relationship, where the teacher is considered as the source of knowledge, while the student is considered as as someone who receives knowledge, or the student is at the receiving end. But in the critical pedagogical context, there is a democratic approach where the student and the teacher both are seeking knowledge, and both are interacting in order to discover, to explore. And as a result, this is a more parallel type of relationship rather than hierarchical one, and so this is a more democratic approach towards education. Then it also helps in bridging theory and practice. So the process of education becomes a means for social activism, where the students take active part in the social life, in the economic life around in the real world. And so there is a kind of close linking up of the school life with the life of the society outside. And as a result, the students see this close interaction. Now, how can we develop the concept of the philosophy of critical pedagogy in practice? So we need certain changes. First of all, the curriculum should be something that incorporates diverse voices. It should not come from the authorities from the top or from the government, but it should incorporate diverse voices, such as the voices of the marginalized communities, or the poorer sections, or the races that are minority. And similarly, the curriculum should also focus on the real world, contextual social issues, rather than standardized content that is selected by the government or by the dominant sections in the society. Thirdly, the curriculum should encourage interdisciplinary approaches, combining, for example, sociology, history, and philosophy. So there is generally an interdisciplinary, so that the students can have a wholesome approach to education and to the link between education and life across various fields. Then the teaching. The teaching should be problem posing, and instead of memorization, the student should engage in classroom discussions about real world issues. Similarly, the process of education inside the class and inside the education institution should be dialogic, where the teachers and students learn from each other through dialogue. So there is questioning, there is dialogue. The process of education is two-way rather than one-way. And the next thing is that there should be student-centered approaches that will actually help in the inaction of the critical pedagogy in our education institutions. In this type of approach, students are encouraged to reflect on their lived experiences and to question dominant ideologies or ideologies that are generally promoted in the society. Similarly, when there is dialogic education, there will be power sharing between students and teachers. So teachers will not have all the power. And the students and the teachers will work together in order to explore knowledge in a democratic way. There should be critical discussions and exploration. And this should replace passive learning, where students are just considered as empty boxes to be filled with information and knowledge. And this will also enable students, this type of teaching will enable students to analyze the society, the politics around them, the culture, and to become critical and conscious citizens. And beyond the classroom, this type of pedagogy also have beyond the classroom implications, and that actually means that the process of education is not confined to the classroom or to the educational institution, the school, but actually there is community-based education projects where the community is made part of the teaching, learning, the educational process. There is encouragement for activism and civic engagement of the students in the society and the society inside the school. And lastly, critical pedagogy is enacted by the integration of education with movement for social change in the society. So overall, what we can see is that critical pedagogy actually challenges the traditional education system, where the students are considered as at the receiving end, where there are certain sets of knowledge and facts and figures that are transferred to the students. In contrast, critical pedagogy develops students as critical thinkers, as independent learners, as people who can question the authority of the educational systems. They can question whatever is being taught to them, and as a result, they become more conscious, more involved in the process of education. The process of education become more democratic, and the atmosphere in the education institutions become more critical and more creative, and the students become more engaged.